Hello, good afternoon. It is Thursday, September 12th, I think it is. Somewhere in there. It is Mini Masterclass Thursday, and we are coming to you today, and we are going to discuss all about outsourcing versus hiring in-house. And this is a topic that through the years I have had a lot of experience with. We ourselves are an outsourced service, but also I've seen many times over the years my customers potentially not even really understanding the difference between hiring for outsource versus hiring in-house. And it's a very important topic to understand for all business owners in all industries, and especially state by state. There are different regulations, different rules, different laws that you have to follow, as opposed to just deciding this is the way I'm going to do it, which is a lot of the times how business owners do it. They just decide, hey, I'm going to make this choice and I'm going to do this thing, and I don't need to listen to anything or read anything or know anything. And that's just absolutely not the case. And over the years, I've had several clients go through audits where at the end of the day, they were penalized for the fact that they were not classifying their individual contractors or employees correctly. And so where they thought it didn't matter and they didn't need to know anything or listen to anyone, it really ended up making a negative impact on their bottom line from the fines that penalties they had to pay, as well as the fact that now they were under additional scrutiny. Because I'm telling you, they say it's not so, but when one agency finds something to look at, things seem to follow suit with other agencies, if you're getting my drift. So let's talk about outsourcing versus in-house. Outsourcing is going to be anything that you don't pay payroll dollars for. So actual payroll. And here's another term. It's another term that people tend to kind of use loosely. Payroll is genuinely something that is paid through a payroll service where taxes are withheld. A W-2 is issued only to the employee. They are employees of your company, and there's different guidelines and different parameters around if there can be exempt or if there need to be hourly, and that's not what this discussion is about. But genuinely, payroll is only actually when your person that's working for you is paid through a payroll service and taxes are withheld. If you are paying a person via wire transfer, that didn't go from a payroll service, via Venmo, via PayPal, via check, via ACH direct deposit, from an invoice that they submit to you, if no taxes are withheld from their wages, that is not an employee. Never is that an employee. That is then a contractor / vendor. Depending on the terminology you're used to using, they're one and the same. They're exactly the same thing. A contractor is usually someone that does physical labor for you, or a physical act, and a vendor might be like Taco Bell or the grocery store, or it also could be an individual that is transacting, doing a scope of work for you under their own name. But really, at the end of the day, a vendor is a contractor and a contractor is a vendor, especially as it pertains to QuickBooks Online. But biggest thing of that equation is if you are not withholding taxes, they are not your employee. Therefore, they need to meet certain criteria, which includes that they are allowed to put themselves out for work to other employers or businesses similar to yours. So for example, if I'm in banking and I'm an employee of the bank, my bank can tell me I am not allowed to work for another bank because they don't want me telling that bank how they work, and they don't want that, there's this thing that goes back and forth. If I'm a contractor, you can't tell me who I can and cannot work for. You can't tell me if I can work for a similar company as to yours. You can tell me that you would prefer me not to, but at the end of the day, you cannot make it a stipulation of my contract. That automatically constitutes that I am an employee of yours, period. The other thing you need to know about contractors is that they can set their own schedule. You can tell them a deliverable date and time. You can tell them that this is a priority or not. You can tell them that this is due every Thursday of every week, but you cannot tell them they need to show up from a certain time to a certain time. You cannot tell them when they can and cannot be on the clock. You can't tell them that they can't work for others. You can't say, I need this done by Thursday, and by the way, you have to be working Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. You can't tell them any of that. They have to be able to make their own decisions on their schedule. They also cannot be hostage to your equipment to perform their scope of work. So going back to the bank example, if I'm hired by a bank, I have to use their systems. I have to be in their building. I have to use their phone numbers. I have to use their email addresses. I have to do all my daily work through their systems, period. If that is the case and you are not allowing someone to use their own computers that are not issued by you, do not have security by you, are not watched by you, if you do not allow them to use their own phone number to transact on your behalf, if any of that is true, they're automatically your employee. Another big one is the invoicing. You have to receive an invoice from a contractor in order to prove that they are genuinely performing work as a contractor. As an employee, they clock in. And in some states, you may be able to get away with, if you didn't clock in, we're not paying you because we don't have any proof. Some states you can't get away with that it's illegal to do that, but other states do allow you to make that stance. With a contractor, you have to have an invoice. You have to have a W-9, and you have to have an agreement of some sort in place that states the work they're doing, the deliverables. Also has language that, they're not an employee of yours. All of this is going to come out in an audit as necessary to provide. So part of what we do as our service is we're constantly looking out for compliance for you in your business. We're letting you know, hey, you need to do it this way. Hey, this is the form you should have. Hey, we know you should be doing this, XYZ. At the end of the day, you can't make someone do something they don't want to do, but we provide full guidance in all of these things because we know you don't know what you don't know, and we know this may be your first time running a business, or maybe you're just now becoming compliant in your business, which is genuinely normal. And most people start out thinking, I'm just going to wing it and see what I can do, and then eventually they go, okay, I really need to reel this in, I really need to get my stuff together. And that's where we come in and we make sure that you know what you're supposed to know. So when it pertains to contracting, you have to have, there's some freedom in a contractor's scope there, right? You can say, hey, I need this, but it's really up to them to produce it for you. And when they produce it for you, even if there's a deliverable deadline, they can work at any hour, all hours, odd hours, weekends, nights. They can take their kids to school in the morning. You can't tell them when they have to do the work, right? Essentially. I've seen this a lot over time, and it's happened to us as well, where as an outsourced service, you're still expected to be acting as though you're an employee of said company. And it just genuinely doesn't work that way. An employee has one job, not many different jobs for many different people. An employee has a designated time. An employee has people that are over them and potentially under them. They're not working on their own. An employee is following guidelines of the business on the business's end, not on their end. A contractor or someone that you have outsourced is going to follow their own regulations, their own communication boundaries, their own scope of work. They're not going to be doing things the way you do them necessarily. They're going to show up, they're going to do their job, they're going to deliver what you've paid them to deliver, but they're still going to be transacting as their own individual business. And that's a big difference than an employee. And that's where some people get it kind of confused, where they think, I'm going to hire this person to do this thing, and then I can control all aspects of how they run their business and how they run their day and how they run their time management, and that's just not the case. So you've got to be willing and able to make sure that you understand the freedoms that come with hiring contractors, to really be making sure you're covering your own butt. Because in an audit, if the contractor is audited and they say, oh yeah, they made me work this much, they made me do this, they made me show up then, they made me use their computer, that's all going to tell an auditor that they really should have been an employee. And now what you're looking at is where you are going to be liable for back payroll taxes and or penalties and fines for all the times that you haven't paid up those payroll taxes, and a reassessment of potentially even your entity and all kinds of things. I mean, it just can lead into this giant rabbit hole. So this is really about covering your butt and not just having a great relationship with a contractor. So understanding how a contractor relationship works, or how an outsourced relationship works, is key to covering or CYA-ing your business. Because in an audit, then you have all the things in place to prove that there was no reason that they should have been an employee. Another huge one is what they do for you. If what they provide is the same thing that your business advertises that they provide, you cannot have them be a contractor or an outsourced service. You have to hire them as an employee. For example, I am an accounting firm. I cannot hire an accountant as a contractor. I can outsource tax preparation because we don't provide tax preparation, but we provide accounting. And so therefore, if I have someone that's going to come in and perform accounting duties, I have to hire them as an employee. I do not have to hire my plumber, my landscaper, a sales consultant, a marketing director. I do not have to have those people be employees, because that's not what our company provides. So as long as I let them do their own scope, use their own equipment, I don't dictate their time, they're not performing a scope of work that our company actually advertises that we perform. So that's another big one. You've got to have a clear defined line that they are not performing the thing that you perform, that you say that you perform or advertise that you perform. Otherwise, they're an employee. It's no ifs, ands, or buts. You do have to pay payroll taxes, and you do have to put them on workman's comp. Now, about workman's comp, there is a misnomer out there that when you have a contract service that you can just hire them, they can come do their thing, and there's no need to pay workman's comp for them. That is true if you have physical evidence that they are covered, they have their own liability insurance and or their own workman's comp insurance, their own certificates of insurance, that they are covered in the event that they make some sort of mistake on your site or in your building or doing a scope of work for you. If they do not, you actually do have to provide the workman's comp for that contractor or that outsourced service. That is how it technically is supposed to work. And when you do your workman's comp every year, there are questions that are specific to, do you pay anybody 1099? You're supposed to 1099 every single person and business that is not an S Corp or C Corp every year after $600, period. So unless you don't get them to $600, unless you've genuinely not paid anybody that's not an S Corp or C Corp over $600, then you should be saying yes to that question on your workman's comp audits. When you say yes to that question, they then ask you to provide the proof of insurance. And if you can't provide the proof of insurance, they then say, okay, well, we're going to assess the liability and you'll have to pay the reported workman's comp on this person. So that's what happens lots of times, most of the time that I've seen, that when we're not physically doing these audits ourselves and answering them truly, I've seen people put, no, we don't pay anybody, because then they know they don't have to provide the information. Well, that's not the case. For example, if I have had a few clients now going through state unemployment insurance audits. In the state unemployment insurance audit, they want to see canceled checks that cleared your account for a given period of time. What they're looking for is if you're paying people who should be on payroll as contractors. So they're looking at like James Smith got $1,000 for you. Okay, what does James Smith do? Oh, he does that? Well, that means he should have been an employee. Or, oh, okay, can I see his vendor agreement and his W-9? If his W-9 shows that he's a sole proprietor or a single member LLC, they then will say, okay, where's his 1099? If you did not 1099 James Smith, even though he qualifies as a contractor, you are now going to get fined because now the state unemployment agency knows you didn't 1099 somebody. So it's just going to snowball, like I said. It has the potential of snowballing, and it doesn't even have to be that you've done anything necessarily wrong. It could be a random audit. Your name gets picked out of a hat, and it's your turn to prove that you're compliant. So again, putting yourself ahead of this by actually doing what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do it, having the proper documentation, partnering with an accounting professional that knows what you don't know so that they can lead you down the path of compliance is so important. The other thing about outsourcing is that you have to understand that you are hiring your outsourced service for a specific scope of work. As different from an employee where you can just say, okay, now I need you to do this. Now I need you to do that. Now I need you to do this. Now I need you to do that. Because you're paying them by the hour or salary or whatever the case is. They're at kind of your disposal and your beck and call as your employee. Contracting and outsourcing does not work that way. So you're hired for a specific scope of work, which includes XYZ. It should be detailed out in some sort of an agreement or engagement letter or something. If you are going to then request services outside of that scope of work, you need to understand that there will likely be an additional charge. That is because as a service, as an outsourced service of some kind, labor or whatever, you're not their only customer. They have other customers, and they have to structure their time and their capacity based on the client load they have. So if you hire them to do X, Y, and Z, and then you add A, B, and C to that, they have to find time to fit in A, B, and C, or they have to then delegate to their staff A, B, and C because you are only engaged to do X, Y, and Z, which means they are bringing in more resources. They're paying more hours. They're paying potentially to bring in other contractors that can perform that work for them. So it costs more money, period, all the way around. Time is money. So if it's just time that it costs them, or if they actually have an expense to produce the actual result that you're requesting, it is so, versus the things that they actually were hired to do. Now, most outsourced services have absolutely no problem doing more for you and expanding the scope, but what becomes the problem is not realizing that there is going to be an extra cost. It's not just, oh, I hired you, I pay you a monthly fee, and now I can ask you to do, my gardening and my babysitting and my books and my, take me up to grocery shopping. You can't expect that out of your outsourced service providers. I see a lot of construction companies, because we do mostly construction, that will hire outsourced concrete guys, outsourced demo guys, outsourced laborers, and they treat them like they're employees, and they're not your employees. They are there to do a specific job. So you really need to clearly define the job that you're asking them to do, the deliverable that you need them to provide for you, for whatever the guaranteed price is, or the agreed upon price, or the contract rate, or whatever it is. Clearly define that, so that once they have provided that service, you know that their contract either done, they're done with their day, they know they can come to you and say, hey, I've done X, Y, and Z. Do you need more out of me? If your contract service is willing to provide additional work at no extra charge, yahoo, that's amazing. But in general, you need to not have that expectation that they're just going to be able to do and perform whatever it is you need from them. They are following a specific scope of work, a specific engagement, a specific agreement that you've made with them to do a job for you. So that's a big difference between outsourcing. And by outsourcing, I just mean there's terminologies about outsourcing overseas, but I'm talking outsourcing meaning they're not your employees, period. That's what outsourcing is. Whether they work for you directly, closely with you, in person, virtually, whatever, it is an outsourced situation. Otherwise, they're an employee, and that's in-house. And in-house doesn't even have to mean in-house. Now, there's virtual employees all over the United States, right? We're one of them. We have employees everywhere. So, but they're in-house. They're our employee, and they have to follow our employment guidelines, our company rules. They have to follow our times zones that we want to work in. They have to follow certain parameters. As if I brought in a contractor, they would not have to follow any of that. I would just be at their mercy, basically, of when they could provide the scope. And then it's up to me to decide, hey, she's not able to do this the way I kind of want it done, so maybe she's not the right fit for me, or he, or whatever it is. Or, yeah, they're really busy. They can't get to my project for 2 more months, so I need to get someone in that can handle our project sooner. Those are the types of differences between telling your employee, you need to drop what you're doing and you need to do this thing that I need you to do right now because this is the priority. Does not work like that with outsourcing. They have their whole day, week, month, potentially months into the future booked, and they're fitting you in as they can based on the current engagement. So hopefully that helps. Maybe some of you out there understand. I have like a hair that I can't get to. I'm trying really hard to get out of my face. Hopefully that helps some of you understand the differences, between what constitutes the availability of a contractor versus employee, but also like having a good relationship with your contractor. You do not hire an outsourced service and then expect them to be at your beck and call, unless you have very explicitly put in their contract that they are at your beck and call and you are paying them to be at your beck and call. Those types of agreements do exist, and there are contractors that will take one client at a time because their engagement is large enough that it supports them in all of their needs to have that one client at a time. Lawyers might be a good example of this. You can have a lawyer that's going to charge you $100,000 to take your case, and maybe you are genuinely the only case that they're taking at that moment in time because they have enough money to substantiate only having one client at a time. Otherwise, you understand that contractors don't just have one client. They aren't just working for you. Everything you give them that's in addition to the scope of work that you have originally agreed upon needs to be fit into their schedule at some point, versus an employee that you can dictate when and how and why and stop what you're doing and do this instead. It's very different. So along the years, I've seen people be very confused, and it's mostly when you're used to having employees and then you go outsource and you expect that you're going to have that same relationship that you did with your employees, and it's just not so. Depending on the state that you're in, you really want to study the Department of Labor regulations for that state around who qualifies as a contractor and who qualifies as an employee. If you are hiring somebody to do anything that does not qualify as a contractor, you have to hire them an employee. It's not something you get to decide and hope you're doing right. You really have to follow these regulations because there's going to be long-term negative effects if you don't. And you don't want to put yourself in this position. It just takes one disgruntled somebody. And I'm telling you, guys, between ChatGPT and Google, every person out there now has access to every single way that they can get you. And I'm just saying that because I'm starting to see it a lot more. Not to mention the IRS is really, write this down, really starting to crack down on S-Corps because there's been so many people that are taking the S-Corp election and then not following the regulations, the bylaws, any of the compliance end of things. They're just getting a tax break without following any of the things they need to follow. So if you're an S-Corp, it is very likely you're going to start getting looked at just simply for being an S-Corp. They're going to find things like this. They're going to find that you're not paying yourself reasonable compensation. They're going to find other aspects of your business by doing audits for compliance. So the best thing you can possibly do is educate yourself. Make sure you're working with an accounting professional that knows what they're doing. Ask questions if you don't know. Hopefully you're working with one that will guide you automatically because they know what you don't know and they can see what you're doing and they can say, hey, hold up. Do we have a W-9 for this person? What are they doing? Where's their vendor agreement? Do you have a COI? Those are all things that you have to remember when you outsource, is that all of that information is necessary to have on file. on file just means that you can produce it when you've been asked to produce it. You don't have to keep it in QuickBooks. You don't have to have a specific way you handle things, but you do have to have it. So just bypassing it because you think, oh, it'll never happen to me. Don't do it. Don't do it. Take Sam's advice on that one. It could happen to you, and it has happened to people who thought it was never going to happen to them. Not to mention your employees, your contractors, they know the rules, they know the laws, and when they decide to, they can make your life a living firestorm. So hopefully that helps you. Please feel free to reach out. We do a lot of consulting and work on helping our our contractors, no, just kidding, our businesses be compliant and know what they need to know. Happy to help you as well. If you have any questions about this, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel or LinkedIn, please leave your comments as well. I will definitely be answering comments. I go back and look through if you ask one offline, and we do answer them. So thank you again for attending Thursday Mini Masterclass. Our next one will be in 2 weeks. I have no idea what we're discussing off the top of my head, but it's the second and the fourth Thursday of every month, and we will be bringing you some more business related content. And we appreciate you all joining us and watching. And if you are joining us late or you want to come back and you can replay this over and over. It'll live on our page, and it'll also be on our YouTube channel. Thanks so much, everyone. Talk to you soon. Oh, if you do want more information from us, we do a monthly newsletter where we put all kinds of this same type of information, updates, regulations, all that stuff, state by state in it. So be sure to visit our website and sign up, or just DM us and we can send it your way. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye. Hello. Happy Tuesday. I am sitting here getting ready for a call, and it's dawning on me that I left out really 4 pretty important points from our mini masterclass that we had last Thursday. And I wanted to come on and just talk through those. So if you haven't seen it yet, our mini masterclass about outsourcing versus hiring in-house is on our page. You can go back and watch it there. But there are some points that I forgot all about, and that is craziness because the whole point of a mini masterclass is to give you all the information. So I'm going to do so here. So first off, we'll talk about taxes and the tax savings and one of the reasons why people decide to outsource different scopes of work within their business. It's very common, very normal, and actually kind of smart depending on, what it is. And we talked about in the mini masterclass itself scenarios around when you can't outsource and when you can. So if you aren't sure of that, you can go back and watch that. But one of the main reasons to outsource is to save money. When you outsource, there's so many costs that you don't have as a business owner versus hiring in-house. And I would say that might be the number 1 or number 2 reason to outsource, is all of the money that you actually save. So any outsourced service that you engage with, you are not going to have to pay the payroll taxes that you would normally pay if you hired an employee in-house to perform that scope of work. So right there, that could be tens of thousands of dollars in savings, depending on the price and depending on the scope and depending on the length of the contracts, etc. So right away, you're saving on payroll taxes that you do not have to pay when you outsource for a job. Okay, next, additionally, in addition to not having to pay the payroll taxes, you then don't have to put that person on your workers' comp. Now, I'll caution you that depending on what you're engaging this person to do, if it's a subcontractor, you do need to collect their proof of insurance in order to get out of having to pay workman's comp for them. But in theory, if you're doing things correctly and you're collecting that information and you're retaining it, you don't have to pay the workman's comp. There's more savings. All right, more savings on the way. If you have a contracted service, part of the stipulations that they qualify as a contractor is that they cannot have a company email address. So they can't have, let's say your company is Acme Software. They cannot have a sam@acmesoftware.com email address, because that is very much an employment scenario where you have an email address for the company. So therefore, you don't have to pay for them to have all a different email address, different software logins. You don't have to pay for their equipment that you would normally send them to use or have in office for them to use. They are responsible for the entirety of their expenses to do their job. So none of that is something that you have to pay for. Over time, as you grow your team, one of the ways to retain talent and to be competitive in the marketplace is to offer additional benefits like vacation, sick pay. Sometimes overtime is something that actually is a requirement of the job, and that's an attractive position financially for employment, is like, I'm going to definitely make overtime. You also may offer paid time off or other types of ancillary refresh days, things like that, to be competitive. When you outsource, you don't have to pay for any of that. So you're not worried about your outsourcing company's vacation or sick pay, or you're just worried about the deliverable and when they get it to you and that they get it to you. Everything else is off your plate. So none of those expenses exist when you outsource. And lastly, I'll just mention training. When you bring in an employee on, it is your responsibility as the business owner to make sure that that employee is trained and equipped to do the job that they're hired to do. So it's your option to bring in somebody that's underskilled and train up, or to go find the employee that has the skill set exactly and bring them in, which might mean you're paying a higher dollar per hour price for them because they do have the knowledge and education that you're requiring, but you're also paying the payroll taxes on that higher amount, etc. When you outsource, you can determine ahead of time that you want to go straight to the person that has the skill set that you need. And if they don't, you can let them know, we're willing to work with you, but we need you to eventually be to here. It's up to that person to then get the training and education they need to be able to facilitate the contract. So all in all, outsourcing is a great way for you to get specific scopes of work that you need, that you don't have to hire for, you don't have to train for, you don't have to pay benefits on, you don't have to pay payroll taxes on, you don't have to pay workman's comp on, as long as they actually qualify. And we did go through those qualifiers in the mini masterclass, so refer back to that if you're not sure. As long as they qualify, it's a great savings for your company. And over time, these relationships can grow and grow with you as you grow, which is the intention always, is that your team includes your outsourced professionals. But those are some of the additional benefits and differences between outsourcing versus hiring in-house. Hopefully that adds a little more knowledge to you about why you would do one or the other. And I'm sorry I forgot them on Thursday, but there you have it. Have a great day. Happy Taco Tuesday.